understanding by degrees the nature of the beast that's in me and how to proceed when confronted with death. What are you going to do about that?
I'm kicking this thing off. Let's go. Bald Noggins. Report.
Every time you say that.
Every time. It's the same thing every time.
You just got to remind me every time what we named this channel.
All right. Bald Noggins, man.
That's why I wear a hat.
That's me too. Gotta hide that noggin. So everybody that is watching, all our subscribers are the noggins, right?
That's right.
We're just a bunch of bald noggins. So this is a follow-up to what we talked last week. We have Tim with us again, our brother Tim, and obviously my brother Mike, and me, Chris. We're here. We're the Bald Noggins representing, reporting. And Tim was telling us last week about his personal, spiritual / medical journey. He has been given a termination date, expiration date, maybe I should say, stamped on the forehead. The doctor has given him like 2 years to live without chemo, but we're not laughing about that.
We're not laughing.
We're not laughing about that. It's a very serious, serious situation. But he's upbeat about it, and he's been sharing his story of kind of how he got to this point in his life, and it's been very encouraging. He's doing well. He's living well with cancer, and I guess if you continue living well with cancer, you'll very soon not have cancer. That's kind of what we're tracking here. So and he went to see the doctor today, so he's going to give us his update as much as he wishes he wants to give. He's allowed to do that. So Mike, if you have anything before I hand it over to Tim and his.
No, I'm laughing because we went to the Catholic church. I went to church this weekend, little parish out near. Anyway, everybody in there, because you take your hat off, it's Catholic church, take your hat off. Everybody in there was older, white hair, and bald. There was like 400 of us there. And so I was just thinking that would have been a great Bald Noggin episode.
Oh, next time you go, take a group photo.
Anyway, but Tim, kick it off, Tim. Sorry.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're with the tribe, Mike. The old Irish Catholics. I don't know if they're all Irish, or probably more German Catholics there.
Not in Salem. I don't know what they are. I didn't know that there were that many Catholics in Salem, but there are quite a few, supposedly. I guess now that I've gone back, I'm one of them. But anyway, take it away, Tim. Fill us in on how your thing went.
Well, it went good. I mean, it's been a, provocative. I mean, it's fun hearing from people I hadn't heard from in a long, long, long time. I mean, that saw the video and, chimed in and sent me texts and sent me little emails here and there and phone calls. And that was fun. And, and the whole thing with the 2-year thing, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a little unnerving at times. But today I went to see the oncologist, and as a little bit of background, I mean,
I want to jump in real quick. How many days has it been since you've been diagnosed? What day are we looking at today?
We're looking at, I've been diagnosed about 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
I remember you telling me it was like the 20th of October.
10th of October I was diagnosed.
Okay.
They told me I had it. Then they had to go through a number of tests to get the dimensions of it and all that sort of stuff.
And for those, I didn't mention, but it is cancer that you're dealing with. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, so I met with the oncologist, and basically I told him what I was doing, but I've had a number of times in my life where things were just mystifying, where you can't cross from here to there. Once upon a time, this is a salmon analogy, but I was working with a group of people kind of more on the periphery, but they were working to get the FDA to allow wild salmon to use the word natural in their description. Okay. The FDA would not allow like Copper River Reds, to use the word natural in the description because they have not watched the salmon eat or have had any kind of oversight in where the salmon go and what they eat. So they are designated as, they can say wild, but they can't say natural. So my cure is wild, not natural.
Yeah, you gotta start off by
So
curing.
because they're not observing everything I do, you know what I mean, and the way I do it, you know, I'm more on the wild, you know, reversal of disease rather than you know, the other way. But it's but it's not but. I mean, that's really not a good way to put it. But my point is that as I've reflected on this stuff, it's really much more of what makes you decide to do things like that, you know, and it's really kind of when you dive down into the psychology of what it takes to make a decision, it's pretty tough because we have been our subconscious, you know, which is the big 95% of our operating system, and we're only operating like 5% conscious. The subconscious is really driving most of the circumstances. And so what does that subconscious look like? What makes it do what it does? You know, you get it really into the weeds. But I thought, you know, and it gets you looking back in time, you know, who was your family? What did they do? How did they do it? And you're always kind of trying to do some course correction, some weeding, and dealing with, you know, minor traumas or unresolved conflicts or things you might have had, because they all influence your day-to-day thinking about, you know, expiration dates, for example. So if you want to get through the day and you like to think catastrophically, like we Irish are really professional at, you know, we've got 800 years of catastrophe to, you know, fall back on. And anyway, so one of the more interesting things I ran across was the idea of, it's called the Talley Stick. So back in 1800, the British had really kind of got their empire rolling and understood new dimensions of how to rule. They were exploring India. They had the East Indian Company. They had a lot of things going on. So they were really into global domination at the time. And what they introduced in Ireland to subjugate the Irish in a very, very slow, they long-range plan, they introduced the Talley Stick. The Talley Stick was a little stick you hung around your neck. And every day that you spoke Irish, somebody heard you speak Irish, they could take that stick and put a notch in it. And when you got home, depending on how many notches you got whooped on. So in 1800, 100% of Ireland spoke Gaelic, okay? And in 1900, after 100 years of this stuff, 100 years of this stuff, 95% of the Irish population spoke English and only 5% spoke Gaelic. So the Talley Stick was enormously effective. So enter World War I. So Grandpa, our grandfather, at one time probably had a Talley Stick around his neck. When he reached New York, you know, he was a young man, say, growing up, you only had the Talley Stick for so long. But anytime you worked for anybody, anytime you did anything, the Talley Stick was your punch card. You know, how many hours you work, what you did. The Talley Stick was really a incredible, ubiquitous tool for measuring labor worked and things done and increments of measurement of all sorts of things. So enter World War I. Grandpa arrives in like 1916. He's probably 30 years old, 28, 29, 30 years old. Right at that particular time, the committee, we were in the Industrial Revolution, and in America, we said, well, we don't do Talley Sticks. You know, we've got something more sophisticated. So at that edge, they were just getting into psychological manipulation. They'd figured out how advertising works. They'd actually used big art exhibitions to encourage the immigrants that were moving to the United States to move west. They had this thing called the American Art Exposition in the 1850s and 60s. And 3 million people saw it in New York and Philadelphia and Boston. And basically they were beautiful panoramic pictures. I mean, you know, oil paintings of the West. But the only problem was no one had actually been west. So everybody was imagining what it might be like. Okay, because they really hadn't gone that far. We're talking west, like past Kansas, into the Rockies, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, so it was enormously successful, and they really figured out how to paint these things because they used religious imagery, because everyone wanted to feel safe. One of the things you feel safe going into the unknown is that your God is with you. You know, somehow this is ordained of God, not just the words of men, but some sort of cosmic divine intervention is going to protect you on your path. So a lot of the propaganda, so to speak, had a woman in a blanket with a baby on a white horse. You know, what is his name? Daniel Boone kind of looked like Moses in buckskins, and
Right.
you know what I mean? He just had all these real subtle images of how to move forward. And so, you know, I'm reviewing all this stuff, and my mind is working, you know, trying to get a handle on some cosmic reality, both immortality, because mortality is running out and you're grabbing towards immortality. You know, you're doing all this stuff. I mean, it's pretty, you think about Archimedes, okay, and a big leverage. Well, when somebody tells you you're going to die and they give you a date, it sort of changes your whole physiology because you're not safe anymore. You're utterly unsafe. You're just not in a safe place. And you have to understand, you go, wow, I'm not in a safe, I can't think of safety in any form that I ever thought of safety again. You know, it's completely brand new. And so then I have to evaluate, where is safety? Well, they're saying safety's over there, you know, at the Chemo Center. And I'm saying, well, I don't know about that. You know, I'm going to see what I can do. Now, I have had some really, what I'll call interesting natural reversals that, you know, are pointing in different directions. I've read about lots of people that have been able to overcome serious, all kinds of stuff with just on a carnivore diet. You know, and they're sticking with it. The other thing is that this is not an instant fix. This is a process. So in the process, I've got my physical rhythms down, but now I find myself into the territory of what constitutes safety in my own mind. You know what I mean? We have very, very specific parameters of what constitutes safety. Is it safe? You know, am I going to be okay? All those sort of things arrive anytime somebody tries to sell you anything or tell you anything. So basically, Grandpa arrives and they have Woodrow Wilson is put upon by the British government and the French, and they're getting beat up pretty bad by the Germans, and and suddenly Woodrow Wilson sees an idea of a bigger sense of how to do things for the United States, because we've reached such an industrial zenith but he realizes he has to change the minds of the whole country, because he ran on a non-interventionist policy. So in April of 1917, actually was it 1916? Yeah, maybe April 1916. Yeah, so it took about a year. So April of 1916, and I mentioned this earlier, he started the Committee for Public Information, all right? And they had the 4 Minutemen, 75,000 of them across the country, and they were and it wasn't just the 4 Minutemen, but they also had movies and theater and all sorts of stuff to gin up the emotions of the Americans to be against the Huns, as we discussed last week, and for America. I think I sent Chris a poster from one of the it's a picture of General Pershing on a horse. You know, it's one of these panoramic posters, General Pershing on a horse with a whole cavalry and infantry behind him. But like ghost figures in the back are the old knights of old and what you see is the spears, and one of the knights has a shield with the Maltese cross on it. You know what I mean? That kind of, that God is with us type of thing. And anyway, so Grandpa gets he gets to America, he's swept up in that thing, and he joins the Fighting 69th, and, goes to war in that, under that, rolling thunder of propaganda. It really was like thunder, to inflame people's emotions and to completely bypass reason. And so he goes to France and he fights. I think they were at Chateau Thierry and Ypres, and I don't think they were in the Somme. The Somme was pretty much over by the time 1916, not over, but, they lost 1 million men. And they took like 15 yards apiece and jiggity jaggedy dimensions over that entire 50-mile stretch of land. Anyway, but that piece of propaganda that pushed forward, became part of the architecture of the way that I'm seeing life now. And so, so it's interesting to look at the history of how I got to where I am and what constitutes, sort of like the foundations of my subconscious, because we're not just ourselves, we're really our heritage. And even though our heritage is a little skinny, hidden over by the bushes, just because there was so much mayhem in Ireland in the 1800s, that, some families, they've got big pictures of, great grandpa on a horse and, all that sort of stuff with a sword and going back in time, where our lineage is really sort of like trying to look into the thicket. Not much there. Even growing up, I didn't really have much. My grandparents were, only had really 2 grandparents, one on dad, grandpa on dad's side and grandma on mom's side. And, but I didn't know much about those people anyway, or beyond that. So anyway, so the idea is that as I'm thinking about my subconscious and what's going on and what constitutes fear and what constitutes this and that, I feel good about and let me just back up to the moment with the doctor, is that it's not like completely jumping out of a perfectly good airplane and learning how to skydive, okay? It's just like he said, hey, listen, in 2 months, let's do a CT scan and let's do another MRI and let's see where you are. You know what I mean? And I'm aggressively looking at other types of options to, if I got to do something, I'll have something to do, but it'll be well thought out and well informed. I'm just not jumping into the chemo stuff.
Tim, quick question.
Sure.
So did the doctor actually kind of take into it? You told them what you were doing, right?
Yeah.
And did they do any, like, try to measure like a positive, or did he think that it was a positive thing or a negative thing as far as the fact that you're feeling better, that you're walking more, you're having more energy?
I think it's like
or is that too subjective? I don't know.
Well, the way I see it is back to the salmon thing. They're not going to, it's going to be like telling somebody what you're doing as a kid and saying, hey, I just did this and this. And they'll say, well, bless your heart.
Yeah, right. It has no impact on what they're going to tell you. Yeah.
Well,
From
good for you.
My experience,
well, good for you.
Yeah.
My experience with the doctors, usually, it's kind of like, well, I'm looking at using this supplement, that, and you just could tell it's like a blank stare. They just know what they're supposed to prescribe you.
Yeah.
And how you're, she's a nice lady and everything, but I just know that she's not hearing what I'm saying. I don't want to be on prescription drugs. I want to,
you almost have to really go and find a natural path.
Right.
That like the guy I go to once every 5 years or whatever, he's a naturopath and he's totally into the vitamin thing. I mean, I probably wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for him figuring out that I had Lyme disease, you know.
Mhm.
But that's the thing. A lot of these things within the medical community, they're not going to tell you. Like, they're not going to say to you, they don't give you anything definitive. Like, I had moving joint pain throughout my body for years, and I go to the doctor. I'd say, yeah, my shoulders really bother me. He goes, yeah, shoulders are really complicated. Well, you know, thanks for nothing. I mean, and he was a good guy, like I say, good guy, and he just had no clue what it was, and honestly, was outside their kind of textbook, program of what they deal with and how they deal with things. So they really couldn't tell me other than give me prescribe something for the pain or. But anyway, so yeah, I get what you're saying. So basically, he just told you nothing. He didn't say anything really.
Well, he was, you know, he was just saying that, you know, if it gets away from you, you know, there's nothing we can do, kind of thing.
Right. If you're dealing with it on your own terms.
Yeah, and so there's a certain level of the sense of well-being, and you know, and like I said, I'm old enough. I've been around a while. It's not that I want to cut anything short, you know, but at the same time, there's enough evidence of people just doing all kinds of things and getting well.
Yeah.
You know, reversing all kinds of disease, cancer included. So I find that the mental path, though, you know, it's just like you have to kind of figure out where you stand. And one of the things, the reason I brought up the tally stick and all that stuff is that the doctor spent 10 minutes with me. Okay. And he didn't really want, you know, and I know, I mean, he's on a meter, and I'm sure if we dive deeper into it, he can only spend so many minutes with me.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're going to charge this much, and he didn't get the sale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He didn't get the sale. And the other thing is that, you know, there's other ways of, as I mentioned last week, of delivering chemotherapy in much lower doses, much more targeted, but that's not part of the way that we do it here. It's much more of a European model. You know, it's very successful, but you know, big pharma runs what it runs over here. So this is the path. And so anyway, so I'm, you know, you get on a plane and go do it somewhere else, and it's, you know, it's a lot less expensive, and because it's not cheap doing it either. You know what I mean? Not that I don't want to spend the money, or if it worked, I wouldn't, you know, you spend the money, you don't care. But the way I'm seeing it is just the stories that are coming out are really not that encouraging.
Yeah.
The upside is, yes, you get more time, but yay. You know, was it worth it?
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, it's a serious issue, and I'm taking it seriously, and I'm not being cavalier, because I can tell that something's going on. Things are working, and it's not a fast process. We are used to things going fast. I mean, to give you an idea, how serious is it? When I went to the bathroom today at the hospital, in the little chemo section, it says chemo patients flush twice.
That's when you know you're in trouble, is when you're told to flush twice.
Yes. So
twice. Wow.
I mean, I can get really deep in the weeds with that, but I'm not gonna.
A long way to see.
You know, it's just like separate your laundry. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
So now the chemo, is that also internal, like you're taking radiation?
Radiation's on the outside. Radiation's the thing, you know, you get the thing that goes wah, wah, wah.
But the chemo is just
it's a drug. It's going through your veins. It's
right.
It's
No,
internal.
I knew that. I just didn't know if it was a radioactive substance that they actually put into you. Could be.
You know, I mean, when I saw the flush, you know, chemo patients flush twice, I mean, almost a T-shirt. It could be one of our T-shirts.
A mug, coffee mug. Bald Noggins, flush twice.
You know,
man.
So you know, and like I said, but as I like to say, humor is the mistress of tears. That's why the Irish people have such a great sense of humor. You know,
who was it that said being Irish he had an abiding sense of tragedy that carried him through his brief period of joy. That was one of what was his name? I keep wanting to say Robert Louis Stevenson, but it wasn't Robert Louis. It was not. He's an Irish guy, and I can't remember his name. Anyway, 1850s or whatever. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
But yeah, it's true. And the other side of the coin is that now with the with AI and everybody's asking the same machine the same stuff.
Right.
It's the same body of information, so it's more the quality of the question. So suddenly it's all about synergy. All right, synergy. So before, in a more world governed by shoe leather and books, you had to go somewhere, find somebody, find the book, then find, like marrying all these diverse bits of knowledge into some synergistic moment that says, wow, if I take 1 + 1 + 1 of these certain subjects equals 800. You know what I mean? And that's basically, I'm not saying that's what I've discovered, but I found enormous synergy within the mix of using biotechnology and, new products and newer products with much more sophisticated manufacturing processes. Wow, it's a different animal.
Yeah.
So it's not as risky. And there's lots of people. I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm taking is pretty newish in the last 3 or 4 years. But my point is that the ideas behind it really are from a backstop of chemotherapy. Like, if these things, what can we make to make people feel better? What are the fundamentals? The fundamentals are detox and anti-inflammation, and balance, metabolic balance, homeostasis. And you achieve that and your body is able to do itself. You know what I mean? If you're treating your body well, your body will treat you well. So we'll see. But the results are, it's like the type of cancer I have is kind of like, whoa,
That's aggressive.
and it's serious. So I'm taking it serious, but at the same time, I used to think PTSD stood for, because the way I grew up, people trying to stop disaster.
Clever.
And so there we were, little people trying to stop disaster.
Little did we know.
Little did we know later on in life they'd come up with a whole new meaning to that acronym. And I feel like, in one sense, I'm still like a person trying to stop disaster. So, but in a way that makes sense, because I'm alive. It feels good. I'm running around, walking on the beach, living my life. And my diet is radically changed, but I'm not hungry. I'm not, chasing, drooling when I walk into the store. I never realized when you quit sugar, the entire supermarket is just a big bowl of sugar.
It is. Yeah,
It's just
amazing.
It's amazing. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's hard. When I was on the carnivore diet, you really can't go out to eat. I mean, they just serve, everything you're not supposed to eat, really.
Yeah, it's 90% carbs and sugar.
Yeah. So it's a
Yeah.
challenge.
So even like today, I haven't eaten yet today, but I'm not, it's not too bad. But it really is a big psychological / spiritual ball. Is the next big thing you wrestle to the ground. And everybody that hits that edge, they start wondering about these things. Is this real? Is that here? Is this there? So you realize suddenly, and I'm just saying this as I'm understanding it, is that the impediments to moving forward are largely psychological. You know what I mean? Like overcoming certain things, and basically, like I'm resetting my body, I have to do similar things for my brain. So it's really an interesting dynamic, meaning that every day I take this, and that, and I do this, and that. Well, those are all physical things for my body: oxygenation, detox, anti-inflammation, and get pushing the stuff into the body biotechnically and all that stuff. But for my mind, that's a different animal. So what are you going to do to fill in the gaps? Because basically, what is sugar in terms of a behavior modification or the way we are? Sugar is immediate low-class pleasure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's immediate low-class pleasure. It's just, let's do this. Growing up the way I grew up, and you guys thankfully were immune from that.
Oh, yes. By that point, we'd gotten different parents after you left the house. We've gotten smarter, better.
Rebooted. But anyway, so it's dealing with the sugar of distraction, in a sense, and gearing into so that you have much more a sense of, you're bringing your subconscious along on the ride with you, okay? That it's in gear and it's believing, because they're always saying there's the other side of the coin that says, not the other side of the coin, but in terms of the psychology, if you think something works, they call it the placebo effect. If you think it works, it's got a 25% chance of increasing whatever you got going on working.
Yeah.
The placebo effect is a powerful, powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's kind of like, I ain't got nothing else to do. I'm sitting around wondering, well, when am I going to eat that steak and that can of sardines? I mean, I got to do something.
Yeah.
So anyway.
The can of the sardines was an issue with the last show. I guess there were several requests on what sardines are you eating?
We'll have to talk
Here's
to those
cancer. Yeah.
Mike,
that's why we got
Portuguese guys.
That's right. Well, that's why we got so many views. People were just curious about what the sardine brand was. Then, the minute we changed and we're not talking about the sardines, it's back down,
dropped off.
Back down to 20 views.
Yeah, but back to what I was saying is that this idea of the placebo effect and all this stuff, if you believe what you're doing, and not in some sort of crazy concoction, but you got your head in the game, you're looking at the stuff that works, and you're basically bringing all your desire to be distracted into subjection in a way, because you want to be distracted. I mean, I've spent a little bit of time looking at motorcycles these days. You know what I'm saying? I said, well, I should be doing something else, because all you're trying to do is not think about dying. Well, you got to change your mind about that.
Yeah.
You just can't do that. That's not really part of the game, because what you're going to do is, as time wears on, you're going to think about it more until you really bring things into order. Yeah. So it's about that ordering, not just your body coming into order, but bringing in the old, bringing the noggin, as we like to say.
Right, noggin. And it's a flashback to the last show when we talked, it was mainly curing crazy. And
yes.
And I think everybody on earth has a certain degree of insanity in their personalities or life. There's something that needs to be cured. I think everybody has it, that they're just a little bit different than everybody else because they're a little bit crazy. You know what I'm saying? So
think about, when I was growing up as a kid, I mean, it was nothing but panic. I mean, Dad, and I'm not disparaging anybody. It was surviving. Young family, hey, let's get, we're going to get promoted. You had to move. And then we're fighting real communists, not these fake ones. We're fighting real communists, with atom bombs. Yes. We're not fighting Russian Orthodox. We're fighting communists back then, the real thing.
Yeah.
And, I sent Chris a poster, it's like the nuclear bomb. I remember Dad on the table in New Jersey had a plan for a bomb shelter in the backyard. And he was sharing, I remember the neighbors, everybody's having a beer and they're smoking cigarettes. And they're looking at Dad's plans on the kitchen table of this underground bunker. And I was just utterly fascinated. We're going to make a fort in the backyard with concrete. We can hide in it. The army, we always had the little plastic men were fighting, everything was war.
Yeah.
Our whole culture was war.
We're a Spartan state.
Huh?
I said we're a Spartan state.
Yeah.
That's what the government wants us to be, is just a Spartan state where we're always at war. We're always training for war. And let's go blow somebody up. Who are we going to blow up today? Let's blow up Russia.
Well, the thing is that after we moved from New Jersey, we move up to Vermont, and we move, make a couple of moves there, move from Cane and Island Pond. And I remember Dad comes home one day, and he was always buying guns. You remember, he had an arsenal, you remember, he had an arsenal. And at our house in Vermont, we had lots of guns, and we had cases, like foot lockers of ammunition.
Oh, ammunition, yeah, I remember that. We
Foot
played with
lockers.
the guns all the time.
Lots of 38. If we just had a shortage of 38 pistols.
Yeah.
Then we could have really had some fun because we had a lot more ammunition than we had 38 pistols to play with.
He had one 38 snub nose, right? He had that little 38.
Yeah, he had a 38 snub nose, and he had a couple of them. He had a service revolver, and then he had a 357 Colt Python, and then he had a couple of Derringers and stuff like that.
Derringers, yeah. Then he got into swords in Montreal. He was collecting swords.
Yes.
So
they were a little bit more not so big on the gun thing. They were a little, but I remember he came home one day. He had a Springfield World War I Springfield rifle. Put it on the table. He says,
"You mean an Enfield?"
Yes,
an Enfield.
Yeah, from World War I.
Yeah, the Enfield
an
is
Enfield.
British.
Okay.
British.
Okay, let's get our facts right. Yeah, Enfield, right.
Anyway.
Enfield. And he puts it on the table because I remember it had this long stock on it, that, didn't have a short stock. The World War II stuff all had the short stock. The World War I stuff all had that long barrel and the long stock, bolt action. Yeah. And he brings it on the table. He says, with this rifle, he says, we have a gun for every window in the house. And I'm like, wow. And I'm thinking, I'm looking, John, Steve, little guys running around. And it's like, well, who's going to, we're going to kind of like, so we have a window, a gun for every window in the house. And he was describing, he says, he said, hey, those Canadians, the Russians attack Canada. They're not going to last 10 minutes. I mean, they'll be coming right across that field out there.
Don't tell the Canadians that, Tim. Our Canadian audience just...
But, that was all the, this whole thing of war and what's going to go on. And, it just kept going, and it kept going and it never really left, And then when I dealt with all the stuff, getting the shot in the neck and all that stuff, was a lot of it really made me think about, the war I'd been in. And to the point I want to make is that a lot of my, the path of being of conscientiously objecting to more and more things as I learn what's behind the reasoning of it, because suddenly I'm seeing the reason. I'm not just dealing with the emotional stuff they sold me. It's not just the band music plays and my heart swells with patriotism and all that sort of stuff. It's like, I'm a little bit more thoughtful now about all those things. And I've just, come to the conclusion, and I haven't wrestled it completely, but I conscientiously object to war in a lot of different venues and a lot of different ways. And when they mentioned the chemotherapy, I could see that I was bringing war into my body. Because really what I'm doing now, my body seemed very happy with the things I'm doing to it. It's responding well, it's growing, and I've lost 28 pounds, but in the last 3 weeks, it's all leveled right off. I've stayed right at the same weight, which means that my body's getting nutrified. The cancer isn't stealing any weight.
Right.
You know what I mean? So these are all these biomarkers that you begin to pay attention to. I weigh myself, I look at things, I test things out. I'm not in the dark, so I'm bringing in more and more awareness. So now, in terms of this awareness, it's the ability to address the psychological sugar in my life, which is the immediate low-class YouTube distractions.
No, don't say that. Oh, man.
Don't go there.
We're going to have to edit that out. We'd like everyone to stop and take a minute, cleanse your mind.
We are not
go back to regular programming.
But see, this is different. This is like what they call, this is full of fatty acids. This is bacon, buddy.
Full of
fatty acids.
This is fatty. Did you just say fat asses?
Yeah.
No, fatty acids.
Oh, sorry.
Speak for
fatty
yourself.
acids. but my point, yeah. So you know what I'm saying? It's just like, so now you begin to kind of take over, you know, your attitudes and your insights and your intellect, and you know, kind of steer it in directions that are really kind of you know, more uplifting. You're getting your eyes off what's going to, you know, like all they want you to know is fear.
Yeah.
I mean, the poster I said, it's like, be informed, and it's a freaking mushroom cloud. I mean, you can dodge this bullet. I'm like, look at it, you know, it's like a mushroom cloud on a poster. And, you know, somehow we can figure that out. You know, it was just amazing. And then, oh, it's so, you know what I mean? It's okay. We've got it all figured out. So I just think that, but everything's personal. I mean, I'm not trying to get political. It's deeply, deeply personal. So all these things I've done, my mind is set to defend the flag. You know, the amount of the movies, the propaganda, everything. I love war movies. You know, I mean, they're just, you know, but why do I like them so much? I mean, it's all about killing people. It's all about death.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, well, suddenly when you're confronted with death, they say you're going to live. I wasn't very excited, even after all the propaganda that's been fed.
Yeah.
I,
Well, it's the difference of we're watching choreographed stories,
oh, sure,
you
exactly.
know,
But
and it's like watching a real fight in a parking lot and watching somebody get beat to a pulp. It's like all of a sudden you go, yeah, that's different than the TV shows. I remember this guy beat this big guy to a pulp, and we ran out to stop because they were running out of their bill. I worked for a restaurant in Yonkers, the Ground Round. I don't know if you've been to the Ground Round in Yonkers. It's closed, but anyway. So I was washing dishes with this football player guy, and so I thought, well, I'm going to stick next to him. And we run out, and this guy gets, this big guy, 6'4". I mean, this guy was he must have been bigger than that. He was 6'6". This guy was like, you know, our nephew Kerry, big guy but heavy. And this smallish guy, my size, beat this guy so badly. I'd never seen a fight like that in my life. I mean, the blood was spraying. It was, anyway, that to me was like, okay, that's a real fight. I never want to be involved in that ever again. I mean, that was just crazy. That was, anyway, sorry.
No, that's good stuff. I mean, it's about the reality of things, you know what I mean? And it's calculated realities that we have to deal with that we're really, most of the time, not prepared for. And the thing I'm grateful, if I'm grateful for anything, was just being able to make decisions that are in the venue of life, not war. If it was war, I would probably take the chemo. You know, if I was in a war mentality, I mean, you know, to get back in the war, what do I got to do? Well, you got to do this. Yeah, okay. But if it's about life, suddenly I'm thinking about life really differently than I used to think about life. Mm-hmm. And I've given up all the things I used to think were absolute essentials for living. You know, good booze, good food, this and that, and all this kind of stuff. And I, you know, and suddenly here I am. And I'm like, wow, life is pretty interesting without the stimulus I used to think that were great coping mechanisms. And I'm not, you know, I see a lot of even my early, you know, chaotic extravaganzas into religion and faith and issues like that were really much more about coping with my dark reality than really solving any issues with it, you know? So I really am moving in a way that deeply spiritual, lots of fun. We'll get into it down the road here, but I just really understand that, you know, this idea of eternity and idea of mortality, you know, there's really something to it, you know, and I'm finding myself much more, you know, intrigued by it, but I also understand that I've been trained, you know, from a very, very young age to serve the state. You know, I'm a servant of the state, you know, and whatever the state says goes, you know, and so I've been, you know, about the last 10 or 15 years really kind of been digging into that. but I understand, not really understand. I'm understanding by degrees the nature of the beast that's in me and how to proceed when confronted with death. What are you going to do about that? And especially if you have time to deal with it, you've got some time to focus in and say, okay, how am I going to focus on these things? And I'm believing that there's still plenty of life left in my life. I know people that have been given, you're going to die, and they're not dead. They're still here 20 years later. You know what I'm saying? These things that people say, they may have some validity based on statistical analysis, but I'm not a statistic. I'm a human being. I'm thinking through this. So back to the mental game is that I realize that, I've been trained to be intellectually dependent on other people. I've been trained to be emotionally dependent on other people. I've been trained to have provisional self-esteem, meaning that my self-esteem is provisional on whether everybody loves me or hates me or whatever. And those things need to be changed in order for you to make good decisions. You have to be intellectually aware and you have to be emotionally aware, not dependent. Emotions are good, intellect's good, all these things are good, self-esteem is good, but they have to be arranged and aligned so that you can make a decision. So,
yeah,
Good.
I think that, what we should talk about some of this stuff. I've been looking into this stuff for forever. It's fascinating when you dig in. I started reading up on near-death experiences, and there's different. They kind of fall into different categories. There's this one category of people's experience where they call it deathbed visions, where people will see something on their deathbed.
sure.
And then you have people that have, traumatic events where they either the heart stops or they don't have brain activity, or it all happens, they die, and then they're resuscitated and they have this experience. And what is so fascinating, and there's probably a certain amount of people that tell their stories getting attention that is bullshit. It's just BS, and you can write off, but some of them are so compelling. It is so fascinating. I don't know, Tim, if you've read up or read any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely so compelling that there is something to this stuff, and a lot of it you get into, people interpret it, and that's fine. I mean, we run stuff, everything runs through a filter of our experience and what we believe and what we know, but it is really amazing, some of the stories. You talk about then people's experience. I think some of the stuff is just, there is something out there. I've struggled with how close, how much do we actually know, and obviously we don't know much, but we talked about this, and this is getting off track, but I find it's fascinating.
No. Life and death.
I went, this girl I was dating invited me to her guru was in Rome, and he was speaking at this event. So I went to this event with her and her family, and I got mind contact with the guy. Did I tell you this? This is a true story. I spent an hour in this meeting staring and focusing on getting mind contact, because at the time I was a newly minted Christian, and I figured that's what Christians did, get mind contact with people or something. I don't know where I came up with this stuff, who knows, but I went back to have dinner with her family at their apartment, and this guru appears to me in a vision shortly after. And really, what blew me away after I thought about it years later, I've been thinking about this often, what blows me, the biggest thing was that it worked. Something reached out to me when I did this focus thing, where I just focused and tried to get something, heard me and reached out. And I don't know if it was the guru. I mean, I don't know. I mean, assuming it was, but then I thought about it. I thought, well, I mean, who knows what it was? I mean, but something reached back and contacted me. I'm sitting by myself in this these people's living room in this apartment in Rome, and I have this event. This guy appears to me in a vision and says, "Follow me, I am the way." And I
Wow.
wow. But anyway, but I think that's what's happening to us when you come to this thin place. It's like you're heading towards a thin place. You've got
Yeah. Very, very
physical
Irish term. Yeah.
You're heading towards this event where you're moving closer, and we all are too. I mean, Chris is, who knows how long Chris
I'm real
has.
close.
Chris
I think I'm about that close.
But I just think we're all moving towards these events. And I think it's like this thin place, you know what I mean? The distance between us and our destination is getting, either we're going deeper or it's getting shallower. I'm not sure how you want to look at it.
The best way I could put it, it just comes to me as you were talking, Mike, about the guy and all that stuff, is that I was listening to Jordan Peterson talk, and he talks about the snake. Moses, they said,
Right.
Make a snake, make the image of the snake. He says, hold the snake. And he says, go look at the snake. And then basically that's it. When you look at the snake, you're looking at death. You're looking at an imitation of death. And in that, there's life. And so basically what I'm saying is that my vision of death is becoming more articulated. So I'm actually seeing more life as I see into death. As odd as that sounds and as contradictory as it sounds. And yeah, I'm with the Christians in a way, I'm Bronx Irish Catholic. That's my tribe. You know what I mean? And anything I've experienced in life is more like, I like to say, it's like spray paint on the walls of my subconscious. It's just so thin and, and all the things I experienced, it's just, basically they accommodated handy madness. You know what I mean? You're a little bit nuts, but it's okay because it requires a sense of, reaching out and wild behavior and all that stuff. And I finally, suddenly, over time, understanding that the spiritual life can be incredibly conscious and slow in the best ways and meaningful in the best ways with nothing, with really nothing. And so, even me sitting here and, one of the things I know in terms of the territory that we're in is that I really believe that, this ground, it's, religion has been so informational, you know what I mean? That words are so braided with, all kinds of warning signals, go left, go right, go up, go down, go here. I'm very, very, reluctant to kind of like engage everybody on some big plane, because really the things I'm saying in plain terms, I believe people will bump into the same stuff in time. You know what I mean? They'll have these lessons, these things I'm understanding aren't any gigantic psychological, unveiling. It's just what everybody has to stare at death. And when they do, it strips you. When you go into that chemo clinic and you see these people in there, they're looking at the snake. They're staring at that staff, that thing. And, they're tired of the snake biting them in one sense. So they're looking right at it and following Moses' edict saying, look at the snake and you'll be healed. They won't bother you anymore. And the whole thing with the crucifixion and all that stuff really has those same elements about it. But, so for me, it was like freeing in one sense to say my tribe or, the people I'm with, I say with, the people I grew up with, the way I was built, the way I was framed I'm with the Irish Catholics. Those are my people in a way. That's my tribe. Now, what I do as a member of that tribe, how I know God that's how I know God as a member of that tribe. And I'm not trying to, anytime I say, everybody, we're going left here, we're going to go right there, is that I find myself in a sovereign relationship with God, with the Irish Catholics, because those are my people. You know what I mean?
isn't through, they've researched it and they have determined, when I say they, I guess scientists, researchers, that the human psyche is like completely developed by the age of like 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. 7, 8, 9. Yeah, right in
all
that.
your, so that's pretty interesting. So when you're talking about, well, my tribe is this, well, that's, you know, if all the way up the age of 10, that's where you were. So,
Yeah.
and
I'm
I'm
dealing.
like,
Yeah. So you have to deal with that architecture. You know, you have to deal with what is. You know, you can't. Everybody wants to reinvent themselves because they don't like themselves. Okay, there's somebody down there that's incredibly likable, and you know, back to the old thing: back to the Baltimore Blue Catechism? Who made you? God made me. You know, and if God made me, all right, here we are.
nothing to
You know
fix.
what you know, so right out of the Baltimore Blue Catechism, that's the rubric of how I think about things. Now, what I add to it and what I think I'm adding to it, sometimes I'm just trying to be accepted by the group, you know, because an awful lot of the way that we manage information is the same way, you know, the kid with the tally stick around his neck. You know, it's like being included or excluded. You're saying the right things or you're saying the wrong things. You know, so I think this idea of the tally stick is still evident in all the digital things. Hey, we say the wrong things on this channel, they'll shut us down. If we go, you know what I mean? Not that I'm into saying wrong things or right things, but what I'm focused on is what am I hearing and what does this information mean? And why am I thinking the thoughts that I'm thinking regarding life, regarding death, and measuring them? And I'm finally able to, by slow degrees, measure what's coming into my mind and watch out for those YouTube sweet treats.
Yeah, that low sugar and
High sugar. High sugar.
Also, I'll just put another one out
high
there just
sugar
because.
for low class people or something.
Right. Craigslist
Where's my
motorcycles for sale? You know, I mean, that's another bad one. I mean, I just stay the heck off of that. But you know what I'm saying? It's just that as we move along, but it's really interesting information, you know, staring at the snake, all those things, you know, going to war, being warriors, you know, and, you know, they get into the whole thing of trauma. So all of us that have trauma, you have a trauma bond. What's a trauma bond? Well, the thing that traumatized you have and I realized that I have a bond with war. I have war trauma.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I grew up around it. I love it when you're watching it on the shows and especially I just watched Kelly's Heroes. I mean, that's my favorite war movie.
Is that really a war movie? That's more like a comedy. I guess it's kind of a war.
It's a war movie with a bonanza at the end.
I mean, my war movies are like Black Hawk Down. I mean,
well, that Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan,
that 13 hours. Oh, I could go.
Yeah.
There's all, you know, they're the whole thing, you know, just all that stuff.
You watch those movies, you actually come out with PTSD problems
right
from watching those movies.
That's a bonding.
Yeah, well, it's true, but you get your examples, your heroic symbols, you know,
that's the brainwashing.
You know, the whole idea of what constitutes, and none of us are heroes. We're humans. You know what I mean? We're just humans that every once in a while you got to do something brave or, you know, whatever, but you're just a human being. You're not the sage. You're not the hero. You know, you're just a guy, you know, you're just moving along and, you know, dealing with the stuff you got to deal with. But I find that, you know, the adventure as we're talking here is really, you know, kind of fascinating. You know, okay.
Yeah, I think that was, I mean, we've got an hour. I don't want to take any more of your guys' time, right? You guys, I know you have a lot to say. Too much to say, I think, at times. But it's important. It's important. Remember, staring at the snake. I mean, we're all going to be doing it. We all are doing it to a certain extent. And I just kind of want to recrap
it out, Chris.
I'm thinking about Flush Twice. Recap a few of the things we talked about. You know, just this curing crazy for the holidays. That's what we're doing. We're helping everybody get through the holidays by curing crazy. dealing with the anxieties and depressions. We all suffer through, but trying to keep that positive attitude, that spirituality, keep yourself grounded. You know who your tribe is. I guess that's an important thing,
and be with your tribe.
And be with your tribe, and don't be ashamed of your tribe. In a way. But yeah, it's really good. I enjoy talking with Tim and listening to your stories, and what you're dealing with is really a big deal. I mean, I can't even imagine it. So we want to be there for you as you proceed and celebrate in the next few weeks the healing and all that stuff. So Mike, you got something?
No,
let it out.
Let it out. No, I think it's fascinating. I kind of like some of the stuff. While you're talking, Tim, I'm thinking of different stories. I'm thinking, oh, you should tell that story. You should tell that story. I was thinking of a couple. Maybe one of these times you could tell some of the. I think they're hilarious, weird, crazy. The one if when we were talking about all the guns, we should follow up on the next one of you guys shooting the raccoons when everybody's sitting in the kitchen and the garbage cans are right at the kitchen corner of the house.
Or we could, if we really get into the darkness, we could talk about the Thanksgiving cat story.
Oh yeah.
No.
I mean, yes, we could. But the other one that was crazy is the one where the guys in Rouse's Point were standing at the corner where Chevalier lived.
Oh yeah.
What was it? And so I haven't been able to figure out who was doing the shooting. Both Dave and John have admitted to shooting. Maybe they were both shooting. They were shooting over John and who was the other guy? The two brothers, the Largies. The younger Largie, Brian. Was it Brian Largie? Anyway, they were at the corner and somebody is shooting over there. Anyway, that any of us survived childhood is.
And we're here to talk about it. We're here to brag about it now.
Oh man.
So I appreciate you guys getting together. We'll do it again next week.
Double salute.
Ireland on the sweatshirt. Soruba on the hat. We got it together. Adios.
And the ocean is calm out there.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.